back to Deep Dive Discussion, where we explore the ideas, strategies, and stories that truly matter. Thanks to Ysh Estayo, the producer and director of our program. Today our topic is the book Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. Now, let's dive in. Okay, so we've got this fascinating material centered around Adam Grant's book, Hidden Potential, plus some related articles and research on learning and environment. The goal for this deep dive really is to stitch together the main threads from all of it, right? What's the core message here?
That's right. And it's a pretty big message. All these sources, they kind of push back against that old idea of potential being, fixed, like you're born with it or you're not.
Right, innate talent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, the argument is that potential is, well, it's dynamic. It's something you can actually build systematically.
So less about luck of the draw, more about construction.
Kind of. Grant especially lays out this really clear framework, and the other pieces support it. It seems to boil down to three core things, these interconnected
Pillars. Okay, what are they?
skills.
Yeah.
How we actually get better at stuff. That's the motivation, the character side of things, and opportunity, the environment, the systems around us.
Skills, will, and opportunity. Got it. Sounds like a solid map for our discussion. Let's start with skills then. The science of getting better. The first big idea seems to be this discomfort zone.
Yes. This is fundamental in the material. It challenges that whole stay in your comfort zone advice we sometimes hear for learning.
Yeah, that does sound counterintuitive.
It is a bit.
Yeah.
But the sources argue that real growth, genuine learning, it happens when you step just outside what's easy, but crucially, not so far out that you're, totally overwhelmed.
Ah, okay. The sweet spot. Not bored, not terrified.
Exactly that. Think about it. If it's too comfortable, you're just coasting, right? Not really learning.
Stagnating.
Yeah. But if it's pure panic, you just shut down. Nothing gets in.
Yeah.
So this discomfort zone, it's where the challenge kind of meets your current ability and it forces you to adapt, to stretch.
And there was even a specific number mentioned, something about the difficulty level.
Right. One article pointed to research suggesting that optimal learning happens when tasks are maybe 15 to 20% harder than what you can currently do easily. It's a specific stretch.
15 to 20%. Interesting. So how do you actually do that? How do you find and practice in that zone?
Well, it means consciously looking for things that
Yeah.
make you feel slightly off balance. It's about picking tasks or skills that are just a bit beyond reach right now.
Okay.
And it also means being willing to seek out and actually listen to feedback, even the critical stuff,
Oof. Yeah, that can be uncomfortable.
definitely. And building tolerance for, not knowing everything, being
Okay.
okay with uncertainty while you figure it out. It's an active choice to step there.
Okay, so embrace that productive discomfort. That's step one for skills. What comes next in the sources?
The next concept is this idea of being a human sponge.
Human sponge, like just soaking things up.
Sort of. But it's more active than passive soaking. It's about deliberately going out and absorbing knowledge, insights, techniques from all sorts of different places.
Not just digging deeper in one narrow area.
Exactly. Especially early on, the sources suggest that breadth learning widely can be more valuable than just depth. It allows for what they call cross-pollination.
Cross-pollinate.
Yeah, like taking an idea from one field and applying it somewhere completely different. That's often where innovation comes from, and it boosts your learning velocity.
Learning velocity, right? How fast you're picking up new stuff, not just your current level. So how do you get better at being this sponge?
The material gives some practical tips, like study people who are great, but maybe in fields next to yours, not just your direct competitors.
Interesting. See how they do things differently.
Right. Keep a beginner's mindset, Stay curious, even if you're experienced. Ask questions. One neat idea was creating your own sort of personal board of advisors. Yeah, people from totally different walks of life you can learn from.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it's about listening actively and just being genuinely curious, asking why.
Diversify input, stay curious, makes sense. But what about perfection? Surely striving for perfection is key to skill development.
Well, Grant's take, and it's echoed in the other sources you shared, is actually kind of the opposite. In the section they call the imperfectionists.
Imperfectionist. So perfectionism is bad for growth.
It often is, yeah. It can be paralyzing.
Paralyzing. How so?
Because if you're aiming for perfect right out of the gate, you're often too afraid to even start, afraid it won't be good enough, afraid of failure.
So you just don't do anything.
Exactly. The sources push for more of a good enough to get going approach, get something out there, then iterate. And there's this powerful idea that quantity often breeds quality.
Wait, quantity leads to quality? How does that work?
Think about the most prolific creators, artists, writers, whoever. They produce a lot of work. Much of it isn't masterpiece level. But through that sheer volume, through all that practice and trying things out, they refine their skills and eventually hit on something great.
So just doing the reps, essentially, even if they're not perfect reps initially.
Pretty much. So, practical advice. Set, minimum viable standards for your first go. Just get the core idea down.
Don't overthink it early on.
Right. Make multiple versions, try different approaches. And this is key, share your work early. Get feedback before you think it's perfect.
Get feedback while it's still messy.
Yeah. And learn to celebrate the small wins, the little improvements, not just hold out for some impossible ideal of perfection.
Okay, that really shifts the perspective on practice. So that wraps up skills. Embrace discomfort. Learn broadly like a sponge, and prioritize progress over perfection. Let's move to the second pillar, will.
The motivation side. This gets into character, right? Yes, absolutely. And the sources argue really strongly that character traits, things like grit, resilience, determination, these often matter more than raw talent or impressive qualifications in the long haul.
Wow, character over credentials. That's bold, especially today.
It is bold. But the really crucial part of this argument is that character isn't fixed either. It's something you can develop. It's buildable.
You can build character, like building a muscle.
That's a good analogy. The sources suggest that facing challenges, navigating adversity, especially if you have some support while doing it, that's not just something to get through. It's actually how you build resilience. These small acts of showing up, of pushing through, they compound. They build that character muscle over time.
So challenges aren't just obstacles, they're training grounds for character. How do you intentionally train it?
Well, the sources give some ideas. Things like practicing delayed gratification. Choosing the harder thing now for a bigger payoff later, even in small ways.
Like skipping the cookie now for better health later.
Exactly, that kind of thing. Actively seeking out challenges that test you. Reflecting on your values, what really matters to you, and trying to act in line with them. Building habits that reinforce the kind of person you want to be. It's about intentional practice.
Intentional character practice. Okay. The next idea under will is defying gravity. What's that about?
This explores the incredible impact of expectations, both our own internal beliefs and what others expect of us. It's pretty powerful stuff.
How so?
Well, low expectations can become self-fulfilling prophecies, right? If you don't believe you can do something, or if others signal they don't believe in you.
You might not even try that hard. Or you might choke under pressure.
Precisely. The material mentions stereotype threat, how worrying about confirming a negative stereotype can actually hurt your performance. But the flip side is incredibly hopeful.
Okay.
High expectations, when they're combined with genuine support and belief, can unlock amazing potential. Believing growth is possible both in yourself and others actually helps make it possible.
So belief plus support equals fuel for growth. How do we put that into action?
It starts with looking inward, identifying those limiting beliefs you might hold about yourself. The I'm not smart enough or I could never do that thoughts.
Questioning that inner critic.
Yes. And then actively surround yourself with people who see your potential, who lift you up, set those ambitious stretch goals, but, and this is critical, pair them with a real plan and the support you need. And fundamentally, shift your mindset from thinking abilities are fixed to embracing growth.
High expectations, solid plan, growth mindset. Got it. The last part of will is lifting others. How does helping other people fit into developing your own motivation and perseverance?
This is such a fascinating insight in the sources. It basically says that helping others grow is actually one of the best ways to boost your own growth.
Really? How does that work? You grow by giving.
Yeah. When you teach something, for instance, you have to understand it much more deeply yourself.
True. You find the gaps in your own knowledge.
Exactly. And when you mentor someone, you gain new perspectives, you reinforce your own learning, and it creates this positive feedback loop. It builds your own sense of purpose and competence too.
Huh. So it's not just altruism, it's synergistic.
That's a great word for it. The material emphasizes that collective growth, everyone getting better together, often achieves way more than just individual striving. Giving your knowledge, your support, it creates more value for everyone, including yourself.
Investing in others pays dividends for you too. How do you do that practically?
Look for chances to mentor, even informally. Share what you know, maybe write something, give a quick talk, or just explain things clearly to a colleague.
Be generous with knowledge.
Right. Build or join communities where people are focused on helping each other learn and grow. and make a real effort to cheer for other people's successes. Genuinely celebrate them. Their wins don't take away from you.
That's a great bridge to the final pillar, opportunity. Creating the conditions for growth. This seems to zoom out from the individual to the environment, the systems. First up is every child gets ahead.
Yeah, this part of the material shifts focus to how successful systems, schools, companies, communities are designed. They don't just spot the obvious stars. They actually create conditions where everyone has a chance to develop their potential.
So it's about system design for broader success, not just picking winners.
Exactly. The emphasis is on equity and access, recognizing that tons of potential gets wasted simply because people lack the right opportunities or face systemic barriers.
Circumstances holding people back.
Right. And the sources show that sometimes even small, smart changes to a system can lead to big improvements in outcomes for lots of people. There's also a strong point about prevention, setting things up right from the start, being way more effective than trying to fix problems later on.
Proactive system design over reactive fixes. Makes sense. What does that look like in practice?
It means looking at the systems you're part of, work, community, whatever, and advocating for improvements that make opportunities more equitable.
Speaking up for change.
Yeah. And if you're involved in designing processes, hiring, training, project teams, think about how to make them inclusive, how to support everyone's development, not just the usual suspects. It means digging for root causes of inequality, not just treating symptoms. And crucially, measuring whether opportunities are actually being shared fairly and working to improve that.
Designing for everyone's potential. Okay, the very last piece of the puzzle in the sources is mining for gold.
This ties everything together beautifully. It's about the challenge of actually seeing potential when it doesn't show up in the usual ways or places.
Potential that's hidden. How is it hidden?
The sources argue it's often hidden by circumstance, like we just discussed, or because we're only looking for one type of intelligence or talent using narrow tests or metrics.
Right, like relying only on standardized test scores, maybe.
Exactly. Different skills and talents need different ways to be seen. The context someone is in dramatically affects how they perform and what strengths they can show. And a key point here is that diverse perspectives are vital for spotting this hidden gold. Different people notice different things.
So we need broader ways to look and more diverse eyes looking.
That's the idea. Practically, it means using a wider variety of assessment tools, maybe interviews, work samples, simulations, looking at past projects, peer input, not just relying on one thing.
Multiple lenses.
Yeah, creating different kinds of opportunities where different strengths can actually emerge, actively questioning our own biases about what talent looks like, and offering multiple pathways for people to grow and succeed, because not everyone follows the same straight line.
Recognizing diverse paths to success. Okay, wow. That covers all three pillars: skills, will, and opportunity. It really paints a picture of potential as something nurtured, not just innate. So, pulling it all together from this deep dive, what are the big takeaways for someone listening who wants to unlock their potential?
Looking across everything, 5 key actions really stand out. First, embrace discomfort. Got to seek out those challenges that stretch you, that sweet spot.
Right. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Second, focus on character. Intentionally build those traits like grit and resilience. They matter just as much as technical skills.
Build the inner foundation.
Third, learn broadly. Be that human sponge. Draw ideas from everywhere. Stay curious.
Cross-pollinate.
Fourth, progress over perfection. Get started, iterate, learn from mistakes. Quantity fuels quality. Don't wait for perfect.
Done is better than perfect, especially early on.
And fifth, lift others. Helping others grow actually accelerates your own growth. It's win-win.
Embrace discomfort. Focus on character. Learn broadly. Progress over perfection. Lift others. Those are really actionable. And they all seem to link together, don't they?
They absolutely do.
Yeah.
You need the skills, but you also need the will to use them and keep going. And none of it happens in a vacuum. You need the opportunities. It's the interplay between all three.
Which brings us perfectly to that final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over after this deep dive. If potential really needs this blend of skills, will, and opportunity, well, what happens if we focus too much on just one or two? How might that unintentionally limit growth, maybe in ourselves, or in the people we lead, or even in the organizations we're part of?
Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it? Can you really reach your potential with amazing skills and will, but zero opportunity?
Or what if the opportunities are there, but the skills or the sheer grit aren't developed enough to seize them? It's about finding that balance.
Definitely something to chew on.
Indeed. Thanks for listening. Grab Ysh Estayo's latest book on Amazon. Need business consulting, AI, book writing, and publishing? Ysh has your back. Contact Ysh Estayo or leave a comment. Until next time, keep diving deep.